if you have a real passion towards it, it can literally end with you coding at night, being at like 1:30 a.m. saying, "Oh, I'm not sleeping, but I like it." It's, it.
In this video, I got to sit down with Alex Zajac, author of Hungry Minds. We went through his career journey and how he found a passion for coding. Now, Alex shares a lot of information online, in particular about artificial intelligence and how that can help us as software engineers. And he's got a really interesting process for how he goes and curates information so that he can go share it with his audience. One of the really cool things about this process is that it kind of forces Alex to go learn about the different things that he wants to be sharing, so it's always keeping him up to date as much as possible as a software engineer. I think you're really going to enjoy this video, so make sure to check out Alex on social media. Sit back, enjoy, and I'll see you next time. If you don't mind, do you want to give viewers a little bit of background for who you are and how you got to where you're at? Because I think your story is kind of interesting from last time we were chatting.
Yeah, sure. Really happy to be here. So I'm Alex. Some of my friends in tech call me Hungry Alex as well because of what I'm doing in the space. But yeah, my background is pretty, I would say, interesting. I wasn't the kind of kid that was like 12 and coding or doing robotics or assembling some stuff or building some stuff. I was not like that. I was playing card games, playing volleyball, doing a lot of sports, but I wasn't into computer science super early on, I would say. Um, and yeah, I think I got to develop this love for like math and generally like solving problems a bit later on when I was in high school and before university as well. And yeah, when I finished high school, I got my first like kind of level degree from France where I was born, and I basically had to choose a school, where to go. A lot of the teachers and people around me are pushing me towards engineering, and I was like, okay, why not? Let's go. I also was like interested into, as I said, into math. So I was like, okay, financial engineering. What is it? What is it about? Like, what is the job like? And I started researching more into that, and I found a school that was quite specialized in financial engineering. But you know how it is when you're young, you see kind of a path, but you don't really know if it's good, if it
Sure.
will fit you. You just choose it and try. So I chose that path, a school in France, in Paris, where I'm from, and it went pretty good the first 2 years. There was absolutely no code. It was mostly like preparatory classes, a lot of math and physics that wink wink you don't really need after, but it was kind of like nice
Surprise.
to yeah, it was kind of nice to like expand your knowledge on that, and it's always like work that you bake in, and even though you don't directly use it in the job later, it's also nice to have it as a ground knowledge. But yeah, I started the school without coding. Third year we started coding, which is pretty late in retrospective.
Hmm.
And it was in C sharp, which as well in retrospective would not have been my favorite choice. I mean, I think it's great to start with an object-oriented language for sure. I wouldn't start coding with maybe Python or super high-level languages because you don't learn a lot of stuff that are important. But we might as well start in Java. And I submitted that feedback to the professors, and I think they incorporated it. But yeah, I started coding in C sharp. I had really no clue what was programming, what was a function, a variable, logs, nothing, and I stumbled upon what are right now two of my best friends, Mark and Nicholas, which were this kind of like nerdy boys. I would say that at
Yeah.
14 were building something, robotics,
Yeah.
stringing something with Wi-Fi, or like anything that was related to computer science. And they kind of like helped me learn to program. I started really enjoying programming in C sharp. I started like building small applications and of course like school projects and stuff like that. But yeah, I after that I really fell in love into coding, and the things got fast tracked along that way. We did an exchange in California for computer science, and we did a lot of like C++, data structure and algorithm. It was way low level programming, and it was super cool to visit a new country and at the same time learn a lot of stuff. And after that, I think we applied to like 170 internship positions all across the world, probably. And the three of us, got an internship position in Madrid, in Spain, for Amazon. So we kind of pushed. I think one had the offer first, and then we kind of pushed for us to be together, and it happened. And yeah,
That's
from
awesome.
there on, yeah, it's like super singular, but from there on, we continued the internship, got all return offers, and we started as full time in Amazon around October, November 2021. And yeah, from now it's been almost, yeah, 2.5, 3 years that I'm in the company. I've promoted to SD2, working on mainly search and also a bit more now on personalization systems inside Amazon. And yeah, it's been a super exciting journey, and I'm super excited to share a bit more of things I know and things from my path here with you.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. It's super cool to hear that. Like I love the stories when someone's able to say like, I wasn't born with a keyboard in my hands and like wanted to start
Yeah,
coding right away. Um, because I think for a lot of us, sure, that is the case. Like I didn't start as soon as I was born. But I was always kind of into computers and stuff, so it seemed like it was almost like a no brainer, just like go in that direction because you already like this stuff. But the
yeah,
more people I talk with, I just love hearing that someone was like, it's not what I was into, and then I basically stumbled upon it or was exposed to it and started to realize like, hey, this is really cool. I love too that the way that you were talking about that, it's almost like it became a passion. Like you didn't realize that
yeah,
you were into it until you got exposed, and you said the phrase like fast tracked, right? And I
yeah,
feel like when you really find like something super interesting, it's almost like it's not work anymore, it's not a
yeah,
challenge.
definitely.
And maybe I shouldn't say it's not a challenge, it's just that like it doesn't matter how big the challenge is because you're like,
Yep,
I just want to do this. Is
yep.
that kind of how it felt as you were like discovering programming and stuff?
Like 200%. It's like I feel like programming is literally like a canvas you can build anything on top of. And I think the first time I realized that is quite early when I was starting coding in with C Sharp.
But before we move on, this is just a reminder that I do have courses available on Dome Train if you want to level up in your C Sharp programming. If you head over to Dome Train, you can see that I have a course bundle that has my getting started and deep dive courses on C Sharp. Between the two of these, that's 11 hours of programming in the C Sharp language, taking you from absolutely no programming experience to being able to build basic applications. You'll learn everything about variables, loops, a bit of async programming, and object oriented programming as well. Make sure to check it out.
We had this assignment which was a image processing in C Sharp, an application to process images. So like filters, overlapping layers, um, basic stuff, I would say, but quite interesting to implement because it's the first time you apply like something like data structures and algorithms, something you can see, an app you can actually run. Before it
Sure.
was like sample programs and stuff like that. It was super early, but still, it was super interesting to build. And I remember this one, I could spend nights like fine-tuning the filters or effects that I would do. And it was like 6 months after I learned coding. I remember I did like this kind of negative transparency effect where this kind of like first image blends into the other with a transparency background, and it was hard. Like the algorithm was probably n third, I don't know, but it was working, and we of course we couldn't process 4K images, but it was a start. Then performance comes after you do the job. But yeah, this was super interesting. And yeah, with regards to what you're saying, that's what I love about that. And I think um, if you have a real passion towards it, it can literally end with you coding at night, being at like 1:30 a.m. saying, "Oh, I'm not sleeping, but I like it." It's
Right.
and this is all like for my personal projects as well. Like I sometimes I forget about time because I really enjoy it. But yeah, I think that touches a great point on that part. Yeah.
Cool. No, that's awesome. And I have that same effect where if I'm really into a project, it's like I will look at the time and I go, "Oh no, like I forgot to eat lunch or I for like it's already like 7 p.m. I thought that I just started on this." So it still happens. I've been programming for 21 years and that still happens to me where I'm like, "Oh crap, like the time has escaped me."
Yeah.
But it makes a big difference when you enjoy stuff. I know not
Yeah.
everyone will feel that fortunate all the time. Even if you love to program, like especially with work, there's going to be projects and stuff that come up where you're like, this one's not it for me. Like it just,
Yeah.
it's not capturing your interest. It can't, it's not going to be perfect like that. But
Mhm.
so very cool though. It's like I said, it's awesome to hear that you had that experience where you're like, yep, I love this stuff.
Yeah,
um,
and I can also provide another example on this one
sure.
of we kind of lost track time, and it was with exactly the same friends I went to the exchange with, and that I started kind of like coding with is um, we were building an application in React Native. React Native was like, I think, super new. Now it's growing technology, and we're like, let's build this app because we have this problem that we want to solve. Let's try to build it and learn from it. And oh my God, the amount of time we spent into that, like the code for some components was spaghetti code. We were still starting to build something with a front end, a back end, a mobile interface, and it was super enjoyable, even though like we launched it on the Play Store and the App Store. It got like a couple of thousand of downloads. Of course, our friends and close family were super hyped about it, like every personal project you launch like this.
Yeah.
But it was actually cool. We saw like some logs from people in the south of France using it, some people in the north and east of France using it. It was an app basically to schedule like who brings what at a party, right? It's always a problem to know, I'm bringing one or two pack of beers or one iced tea, one Coke, and you never know the exact amount. People are lazy to count, they forget, and then you kind of like, it's not a hard problem, I would say, but still it was something we wanted to solve at that age, right? And we solved it a bit with this. Again, in retrospective, way more stuff to do better on the code side, on the product side, but
Sure.
still, it was great learning. And again, one of these examples where passion like trumps, oh no, I should just only work 1 hour and enjoy. No, if you enjoy a bit more and it's a cool trade-off for you and it passions you, then go for it.
Yeah. So yeah, having friends to build stuff with is also like super valuable because like again, when the motivation happens to dip, if it does, then you have friends that are there like also building and you're like, hey, like no, it's you can feed off their motivation and passion as well, which is great. And I like your example too because it's a good reminder. You're saying in retrospect, code was spaghetti. There's way better stuff we could have been doing, but guess what? You shipped it. People were using it. Like
Yeah,
it
exactly.
didn't have to be perfect, right?
Hmm. Of course, of course. And the second, like, good, I would say, side of that story is that when you're in third or second or third year, at least where we were, it was really not common for people starting to program to launch an app it was working. It was not like beautiful. It was not I, I I mean I emphasize a lot the UX, the front end stuff because I still love that. But it was working, right? And I think that's the point. We come to an interview, you didn't have any experience. We build this app, there's 100 people using it. I can show you the logs right now on my computer. And this is something super powerful as well when you start. When you don't have really experience, you are in this cold start problem of I need experience, but to get experience, I need an internship. To get an internship, I need
Hmm.
experience. This cold and chicken problem. Honestly, the best way we found with my friends and I was to build stuff, show it, even though it's not perfect, and just write about it, write an article on Medium, or a post on LinkedIn, write a tweet, Reddit thread, whatever. Just expose it, even though it's not big. It's something that at your level is big because you just started programming. You're a student. Nobody expects you to build the next Facebook or Instagram or whatever.
Yeah, and that's like, thank you for mentioning that. I think that's critical advice because it comes up all the time, right? And it's understandable, especially people trying to break into the industry, more junior software engineers. It's like, what can I be doing, like to get
Yeah,
hired, to get that exposure? Um, I always recommend to people to be building stuff, and I want to add the caveat that like not everyone has all of the time in the world outside of their like
exactly.
whatever they're doing from their 9 to 5 currently. I get it, but like because it is competitive, like other people are doing this. So if you want to be competitive, it's almost like I'm saying you don't have to, but it's like
Yeah,
probably the thing you should be doing if you want to stay competitive. But
as
the
well.
other thing you said that's awesome is like the goal when you're doing this kind of stuff is not to say how do I launch $1 billion startup. Like that's not the goal. You need to be
Yeah.
building stuff which is going to give you practice. And even better, if you can ship something, like again, I
Mm.
don't say that you have to ship something, but if you can, what's
Yeah.
interesting about that is that you have some evidence that you're now supporting something. And that's
Yep,
another
exactly.
part of when you're working. It's not just I'm going to code something, press commit and push and then you're like, "Hey, it's done forever. Like I never have to look at that again." Like
No.
no, you're going to spend more time looking at that, unfortunately. So, yeah,
Yep.
getting something to that state where you have users is super powerful.
Hmm.
Talking about it online, being able to just like communicate things to like for example, you wrote the code. Like when you go to write an article about it or to tweet about it, what you're not doing is just copying and pasting the code and saying like, that's it. You're
This is it.
communicating different thoughts about it,
Yeah.
right? So so you had success doing that as well, then being able to kind of talk about those concepts online.
Yep. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I remember when I was at that moment, I was doing a few posts on Medium, on React Native, some animation things. Again, I didn't publish like 100 posts, but again, it was something out there that
Mhm.
I was publishing. Just the feeling of pushing the publish button is quite powerful. Like it's mine, I did it, even whatever the quality it is. Of course, when it has a high quality and you're starting, it's great because it shows that you have learning and it shows that you have growth into what you're doing too. Um, but yeah, I started writing on that. I kind of stopped like having these blog articles, but now I have something else that we can touch base on with my newsletter and my content creation on LinkedIn, sharing things I learn about, sharing links I found interesting for engineers and future engineers. So it's always about putting yourself out there. I think that's quite important. And I also totally understand there's some people that might be more, I would say, introvert or extrovert, but there's always a way you can find. You don't have to, I don't know, show your faces. You don't have to be recorded. You can just write. You can just do that through code, through reviewing others people's code and build an influence on that. There's a lot of space for that. It doesn't have to be, oh, I need to get on camera and produce 10 shorts a day to be interesting. No, I don't think that is. And in any case, the attention span is something that is so moldable that at some point you have to find what works for you as well. There is no generic advice on, yeah, I should write X articles plus X videos. It's too hard. It comes back to the first topic. It should be about passion and about putting yourself out there and also working towards the goal that you have. If your goal is to get hired, for example, you have experience, what we talked about before, building something and showcasing it might be a solution. But again, there's so many factors that go into that too.
Yeah, that's great. And I think, good advice too, because I think that like I have recommended to people to build in public. And learn in public. I recommend that people don't take it, it can be a tricky balance because I think some people hear that and they go, okay, well, if I'm learning in public, then I need to be like I think about it as an influencer. But the problem with that is like generally that influencer mindset is more like I am an expert in the space,
Yep.
educating you on it. But I think that's a mistake because you don't want to learn in public and say, "Hey, look, I'm an expert," because you're not, and that's
Yeah,
okay. But like
that's fine.
being able to learn in public and saying like, "Here's this cool stuff I'm trying out. Here's the takeaways that I have." What people don't realize, I feel like a lot of the time, is that you don't need to be an expert to be able to
Yeah,
have a meaningful impact on other people because there's other
totally.
people doing the exact same thing or they're a step behind you and they can look at what you're doing and go, oh cool, like I wanted to go learn React Native, and the fact that this
Yeah,
other person was kind of stumbling through it and they had some takeaways, like now I don't have to stumble through it the same way. Like that's
yeah,
super cool.
yeah,
So I think it's great, and I like your suggestion that if you want to start doing that kind of stuff, you don't have to. It's not like, okay, well, I guess I'm a content creator and I got to crank out 100 videos, and I can't imagine being on camera. Like if you want to do that kind of stuff to start sharing, you need to find something that's comfortable that you'll do, because
yeah.
otherwise you'll start and you'll go, I hate
You'll
this,
burn
like
out.
not for
Yes.
me.
Yes, exactly. It has to be aligned with an incentive that is strong to you. If the incentive is weak or doesn't hold, I found, at least for myself, that it just doesn't stick. It just doesn't stick.
Yeah, that's a like 100% that. So not a lot of people know this because I've only started for my content creation. It's only been ramped up the last 18 months, but I started my content creation 11 years ago.
Oh wow.
uh, but I gave up because the incentive, like you said, the incentive wasn't strong enough. I wanted to do like a learning in public thing for individual contributors that have gone into engineering management and started blogging and stuff. And I was like, wait, like this is a lot of work and no one's reading it, or there's
Yeah,
no like tangible benefit that I was seeing. In
yeah.
hindsight, I should have just kept going, but it's like the incentive wasn't strong enough, and I gave up. Right, so I
Yeah,
think, yeah, it's got to be aligned to you, so that's cool. But You have a news. Let's talk a little bit about because I know we want to get into some AI topics. Maybe we can hear a little bit about your newsletter in general, what you like to talk about, and then we can kind of go down a more specific path on some cool stuff that's going on. How's that sound?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Thanks, sir, for providing that. Um, so yeah, my newsletter, Hungry Minds, I started writing it, I think a bit more than a year. I celebrated a year at the beginning of June.
Nice.
But yeah, I basically started because I was following a lot of links, newsletters on deep dives or tips, tools, or GitHub repos that I really love, and I was reading about them and I was exploring them, going into the rabbit hole, as we say. But I was like, if I'm reading all of this, I might as well build something out of it and try to launch it and make it work and also benefit other people. Because I have a very, very specific view of the world, right? These newsletters, these repos, the things I'm tracking to read, but others might not have it because they're not that much into the same thing I'm watching or something else. And so I started Hungry Minds as mostly a curational newsletter where I share, I would say, deep dives, link on engineering, on leadership, GitHub repos, sometimes tools as well. I also have every week a coding tip, and of course a meme to kickstart your week on the right foot. I send that on Mondays, quite early for US time zone and at noon in Europe. And yeah, I've been getting quite a bit of traction with this and my content creation on LinkedIn as well. I'm planning a lot to add features to it. Maybe launch a second column with dedicated deep dives on certain topics. So I'm planning to expand it, also maintain in the back end, I would say, a system to create my links, to make sure I focus on the right things. Um, and yeah, I think it's a pretty fun ride to, build around the tools like Substack and Beehive as well that I'm using for my email list, and try to be creative into how to spread it to people, how to collect feedback, and how to develop it. I think those are the three pillars, right, that are important when you're building a product. So yeah, I've been having a lot of fun doing it. It's a weekly one, so every Sunday I kind of review and prepare it. And yeah, I've been having a good amount of feedback outside of my company and also inside of Amazon. A lot of
Cool.
people like reach out to me saying this is amazing, please continue. And this makes me so happy to see those kind of feedbacks because, as you said, it's about incentive, right? Incentive is not one metric that it's binary, there or not there. For me, it's a multiple blend of things: how much I enjoy, how much it's cool to code with it, how much people benefit, how much audience it can create, and all of this stuff, right? I think it creates also a great platform for people to read and gather around the fact that they're hungry to learn more, and that's why I name it that way.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's I think you mentioned something really cool there where as you were saying, like you want to have alignment with the things you're doing. You want them to, you want to be passionate about it, but it doesn't have to come from one source, right? So
Yep,
sometimes like a really something that feels very intangible is like how much it's helping other people or maybe how much
exactly.
um like truly the impact is there. And to give you an example, because obviously in terms of metrics and numbers, like I think if someone were to look at what you're doing just on the surface, they go, oh, like there's a lot of interactions, like a lot of subscribers, a lot of followers, like those feel like very quantitative. They're easy for even someone else to go, there literally
Yep,
must be some impact here just based on numbers. But something that we it's like harder to gauge is like when you have people that will message you or like you'll run into them at the office or something and they're like, hey, I
yeah,
saw that thing that you did and like that was really helpful for me. Like
mm,
it only takes a couple
definitely.
of those for you to be like, oh man,
Yeah,
like people
definitely.
benefit from this. So
Yes.
it's really cool
No,
that you have that
I think
experience.
I think that's a metric that is invisible, right? It's hidden from outsiders' perspective. I only can see it as a creator, right? And of
Mhm.
course, when posts are public, you can see the comments and everything, so that's fine. For example, on Substack, but I think, as you said, this is super valuable. Like the other day, my director reached out saying, "Yeah, this is super cool. Keep rocking," and we had an informal chat. Um, People literally from everywhere in Amazon in the US, in India, in Europe reach out to me as well for that, looking for guidance, and I try to help them as much as possible. But as you said, there is nothing like I'm sending my newsletters, as I said, every Monday, and every Monday, like in the first 2 hours, I see like 2 or 2.5K people opened it in the first hours. And when you think about it and just like step back, 2.5K of people is a lot of people. It's not a
Yeah.
stadium of soccer. It's not like, something like that, but it's a lot of people if you put them side to side opening what I write about. So yeah, that's why I want to develop a bit more the writing part, maybe like have a second more writing focus rather than curational focus column. But that takes time. That takes a lot of work to integrate, to make sure it's scalable and I can deliver it as well, because it takes a lot of time to
Yeah.
create links. Um, but yeah, I think that's great points there that you raised.
Yeah, no, that sounds awesome. And I think obviously with content creation and the amount that you're doing, um, I see there's like a benefit for yourself where you get to go, like you're basically forced to go learning different things. Like you now have a commitment because you have an audience where it's
Exactly.
like people are expecting this newsletter from you. So I have a
Yes.
couple of questions and I don't know the order to kind of approach them. And so I'm going to put a couple in front of you and see maybe what you want to talk about. But
Sure,
one
sure.
that I'm interested in is like balancing your time because obviously you
Yeah.
have your job. How do you make time for this and like life outside of it? And the other thing that I want to ask about is like is the learning opportunity, right? So because you have this commitment, like how is it shaping how you're learning and how you approach learning? So those are two
Yeah.
questions, and I just wanted to feel that out.
Yeah, but no, definitely. Like, I think again, balancing time is something that is super personal, and there is so many like guides and like books on the subject. And I think there's general advice that kind of works for most people. But for me, what I find the most effective is the time blocking technique. Some people are have different ways of managing the time, but for me, time blocking works really well. So in terms of balance, I really, really optimize that metric in my life, if we can call it that way. I think balance is super important. I really also like the quote that Jeff Bezos once said that was super controversial, that work-life balance doesn't really exist because it would imply that it's 50-50. And it's not true. I can have a balance that is I'm 70% work and 30% of my personal life, and this is my balance, or the opposite way around, right? And I think that's again coming to the same topic, that it's quite personal and it has to feel right for you.
Mm,
As I said, in terms of managing time, I use time blocking. My newsletter and my content creation, I do every single thing on Sundays. Everything. I schedule the post, I schedule the newsletter, I schedule and cross post things to Twitter. I will look around some links I want to share or comment about and save them in my Notion. I use a super simple system as well for my stuff. I use Notion to take notes. I use Google Keep as reminders. It's amazing. Super simple app, works really great. And I block out some time on Sundays to write my newsletter and write my content. This is how I protect, I would say, the time from the week. So that in the week, I can go 3 times to the gym. I can go see some friends on Friday. I can go to work, of course. I can go do all this interesting stuff, and I know I'm protected of this commitment, as you said, because I have Sundays. Now the problem becomes when I don't have my Sundays, when, for example, I'm in vacation or people are
mm,
visiting and I can't, right? So in this situation, I also have a SOP, a standard or operating procedure, as I call them, where I have a lighter newsletter and lighter content. In that strategy, I either reuse some of the posts or I have a backlog of things saved that I know can work quite well, and I draft from them. For my newsletter, I might share a bit less links, run my algorithm in, I would say, fast mode, review, I would say, more likely the articles. I still
sure.
with the excerpt, the title, and everything. But if I have 1 hour, I have 1 hour, so I have to squeeze it in. But I make sure that I do it on Sundays, and it's always done for a bit more than a year right now. I'm super proud of that consistency. I think it requires great effort, and it's also great for the mind. And it also, as I said, acts as a mechanism so that I'm never like stressed what I'm going to post tomorrow, what I'm going to post in a newsletter. And along the week, I collect links with Pocket. Pocket is a great tool to bookmark stuff and get it later. There's also Readwise that is great, but Pocket is simple and works everywhere. And so yeah, I come on Sunday. Also, I'm protected a bit on from Saturdays. If I go out on Saturday, I know I cannot go to sleep super late because I have this other day to work on it.
Right.
So it's a high commitment because people might say I actually work 6 days a week. But in that instance, I work for me, for the content, and for the people I try to learn my insights from. So I'm fine with that trade-off.
That's a super cool. I think the parallel I want to draw here too is like right now we're talking, and because I asked you, right, we're talking about the content creation, doing how you balance it, and then for folks that are watching, if they're again software engineers, if you are again, a lot of people are watching this that are trying to break into software engineering, or maybe they want to switch companies or whatever, and they're trying to say like, how do I kind of level up and get ahead? But something that you said that I think is super powerful. Well, two things in particular: the time blocking as a strategy, because that will work very well for some people. Other people, maybe it's not for them, but it is a strategy. I use it for some things and it works really well, and other things I block the time and I go, great, I blocked the time, but I'm using it for something else.
Yeah,
So I have to
it
be
has still
careful with
very
it.
flexible a bit. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So I have to be careful with it, but I think it's a great strategy. But the other thing you said that's a huge important takeaway for anyone, not for content creation specifically, but for anyone, consistency. So you were able to carve out time every Sunday, like as much as possible, right? There's going to be things like vacation and stuff that come up, and you had mitigations for those. But you said, I'm doing this every Sunday. And now you have over a year of consistency, and I think some people don't realize like it's simple, it's not easy, but it's simple,
yeah,
right? And
exactly.
if you just stay consistent, the amount that you can accomplish in a year is like it's incredible, and you can
Yeah,
apply that for building your side projects and learning things. If you said every week for 1 year I'm going to try building a little project in some new tech stack, you would learn
you can
so
learn a
many
lot of
things in a
stuff.
year.
Yeah. Definitely. And the hardness comes from that. I think you're right. The hardness comes from the fact that it's simple but not easy. There's weeks where you're like, oh, I'm tired, or had a
Right.
bad week somewhere else, and you don't want. And that's why I have, as I said, this, I would say, SOP, standard operating procedures, where it has to be not hard for me to do it, because if not, there's a high barrier, right? And you're like, oh no. In the first beginnings when I was doing Hungry Minds and my newsletter, it was taking me 3 hours and a half to do it every Sunday. That's a lot of time. It's okay, the Sunday has like 10 hours, but that's still a lot of time. Now it takes me around an hour to do the newsletter. I'm trying to bring it down to 20, 30 minutes with like custom systems. So I think that's also key. Like if you have a goal you want to accomplish, writing for a year, get X amount of subscribers, get this amount of followers, learn about this amount of stuff, you have at some point to stay consistent. And of course, I think as you grow older, there's way more stuff coming into your life. At some point, a family, like stuff like that. So it's hard to maintain. But if you start with that mindset of I can allocate that time consistently, then I think it kind of grows on you. And I really enjoy doing it today. There is not one day where I'm like, I hated this Sunday. It was awful. No, because I do the newsletter on the morning, then I do some content creation, I take some breaks and have a film at night. It's a great Sunday for me. But yeah, I think again, this is highly personal. Like a lot of people outside of like content creation or as well outside of coding or programming would be like, but I don't understand. You don't enjoy on Sunday, and I'm like, I enjoy what I do. I learn a lot of stuff,
Right.
and that goes to your second question as well. Like I try to prioritize from the things I share what I read in entirely, and which ones I more skim and kind of like save for later. So I have a small system for that. Of course, I have a queue of 1,000 articles I still need to read, but I try to rank them somehow. And on terms of learning, that's why as well the focusing on Sunday is quite important, because then the whole rest of the week I can build stuff, I can learn stuff, and I can do things outside of the programming world as well.
That's super cool. And so, yeah, I want to hear a little bit more about the focus around the topics, and maybe we can pick a couple of them and kind of see how they're
Yep.
applicable for software engineers, right? So if you're going into like the curation process? Like how much of it is exploratory? Because you mentioned you have a backlog of things. How much of it are you just like, I'm gonna go out and see like any area and just like what's the latest trendiest thing? I don't know how you approach it versus like I know that there's some very specific things that people want to hear about or that you want to hear about and get more
Yeah.
information. How do you balance those pieces?
So this one is quite hard for me, and that's why there's variety of like types of content being shown in newsletter. I have generally like deep dives on big tech software designs, so like how, I don't know, Shopify reduced by half its latency, how Google managed to create this service, like anything that would be like that. I'd have a lot as well of career growth and leadership articles. I follow a lot of people on Substack, and I think there's great content out there. I could quote them, but there's just so many, so you can try to see in my newsletters if you catch them. But I share content on that because I think it's key at some point. I'm now mid-level engineer at the company, and this is where as well you need to like scale your growth not only with technical skills but also with other things. So that's why also I share it. It's basically things I like to read about or learn about. And in terms of how I balance it, it really depends on what's out there in the week. I try to fetch stuff that is quite new. It doesn't mean that it's like flashy or like trendy or anything. It can be an article that is new but on an old topic, and that's perfectly fine. But I try to, I have a system that fetches like from Substack, from other RSS feeds that I follow, and I try every week to expand that system to see what can work, to also kind of like mention creators I love collaborating with. It's also a win-win for both of the parties. Then GitHub repos, I track things as well. I track the news with again RSS feeds, and I share more stuff here that is related to AI or developments or like valuations of companies. So there's a lot of variety of stuff in the newsletter, and I intend to kind of keep it that way because I just like to learn and see a bunch of different stuff. I love to start the week with a quote that will motivate me. I love to start the week with a meme that will make me laugh. So it's literally a bit of a projection of me, and so far I think
That's cool.
people enjoy it. So I'm trying to also gather feedback and see what can be the next steps for that.
Awesome. No, that's cool. I love that it's like you said, it's a projection of you, right? It's nice that when you have something where you don't feel like you have to be a cookie cutter to make it successful, like you can say like this is my personal kind of take on things. So that's awesome. Um, AI topics, because I know this is a big thing for you. Maybe a general question to start this off is like in terms of trends with AI and how like that's affecting software development, like maybe what are a couple of things that you're observing or like I don't necessarily want to say put you on the spot for predictions, but if you have some thoughts about the direction of how things are going, like what's that look like to you?
Yeah, I think AI is a great step forward when used right. What I'm saying by this is, again, it's so easy to spin up ChatGPT, ask a question, and copy paste the code, and it might be working, might not be, but I think it really has to be. It's the same thing. I would parallel it with the same thing with social media. You can use it
Okay.
and get lost into it, get lose 6 hours on TikTok, and be like, oh my God, it's 9 p.m. What did I do? and and you can have the same parallel with AI. If you just blindly kind of like rely on it to provide answers without doing the thinking, you you basically delegate the thinking to AI entirely, then it can be a bit of a situation because you don't really learn or grow or
Mm,
apply things that you can learn. So I'm trying as much as possible to shift the problem around, and when I fix something with AI in my personal stuff, I try to understand why is it happening. And for that, like there's a couple of tips that I would love to recommend. One thing I do a lot is whenever I run into a bug or something that I don't understand, I first copy paste that part of the code or anything and try to ask the system to explain to me what is happening and why doesn't it work. Again, here I speak entirely on my personal projects because I'm not really allowed to speak about what is in the
yep, that's fair.
company I'm working with. But yeah, I am doing that a lot. I use, of course, GitHub Copilot. I really advise people to try to use it or similar if you don't, if you can't afford it. The free tools are also quite nice, but Copilot is really cool. Uh, because it's literally helping you. But I think the core principle is to always be the pilot and not be the co-pilot, if I can make that analogy.
Yeah, you don't
I
want to be the co-pilot. You want to have a co-pilot.
Exactly. So that, as I said, like there's different level of difficulty of stuff, and for trivial stuff, AI can be super good at implementing it without any issues. You could not understand what it do, and it would work in most cases. But I think there's still a lot of value to understand why this is the case, and it doesn't really slow you down. For me, I found that it really helps me. Example, I'm doing a bit of development right now in smart contract on Solana blockchain. This is in
Okay.
Rust. For me, Rust is hard. I think for all first learners, Rust is hard. And
Yep.
I just copy paste even docs and say, what is that? And I'm pretty sure in a couple of months, there's going to be AI agents integrated into docs so that people can ask about them and learn about it. I think this is great. On the learning part, this is amazing because you don't have to Google, find a video, find a specific spot, or not find anything in the docs. You can literally try to have that and be answered in seconds. Well, the agents that can
It's an
browse as well.
interesting shift, right?
Yes,
The
exactly.
shift that we're used to is I have a programming problem or any type. I mean, we're talking about software development, but I have this problem. You almost need to figure out like how to go find answers, right? Like, and some things you're stuck on, you're like, how do I even search for what I'm stuck on? Like, I don't know how
Yep,
to go ask a search engine the things that I need because I don't even know how I'm stuck, right? Like, it can get really complicated. A lot
exactly.
of the time, we might have like, I don't know, you have code that you can, like a little snippet you can put into a search engine or like an exception trace or something, and we can get by. But now it's up to you to go sift through the things and basically navigate the interwebs to go find the right links, to go find answers. And you're kind of guessing at each spot you go. And
Exactly.
with AI and LLMs, we're able to kind of invert that to say, like, let me just describe the challenge I'm facing. Like in plain English, let me describe it. And with the LLM's ability to go sifting through content and understand it for us, it just like replays all of the work that
Yes.
we would have been doing by ourselves.
Yes, totally. And I think it as well, like it's really great to like practically I also really like generating like tests with AI. And of course you need to double test,
Mm,
check everything and again be the main actor in that. But it's great because you can see how you can implement the use cases and also like protect your code like on edge cases and all of that. And I think as it all relies to the same principle that I really like. I think it's a quote introduced by Mrs. Korzikov on LinkedIn from Google that you never should delegate the thinking to AI, but more the execution, right? Trivial execution, prompt that you customize. And I do this a lot. Like I have a bunch of custom prompts to like either I don't know, translate a list of links that are minified to something else. This is something you can do with code, but I have a lot of prompts I have saved as snippets so that I can quickly paste them in any LLM that I'm using. I love to use GPT-4, Claude 3.5 also just came out, which is super good. I also use Perplexity as a I would say augmentation of Google search. So I love to use these systems. I mentioned as well Copilot. There's so many that I'm experimenting with as well, but I think these are pretty consistent. And again, we're taking the example of my newsletter. I have a few prompts that I have saved that help me with generating it and also like ideating over stuff I can write.
mm,
And I think the secret here is it's super stupid, but a lot of people know about it. At least from the one I talked to is using snippet. A snippet is basically a list of, I would say, a couple of letters that you would paste somewhere, and you would paste a longer string. For example, if I have a prompt to, I don't know, summarize some code, I can
sure.
name that snippet SUMC, type it on my keyboard, and it will paste the whole prompt. This is great when you do a lot of repetitive tasks or prompts that are the same. And and for me, it's the case. I have like some prompt that are consistent that I use for code or for content creation or newsletter, and that's great. That's a great mechanism. There's a lot of snippet managers, free, not free. I use Alfred or ScriptKit. which is also an automation engine for Mac and Windows. I think they launched on Windows. So yeah, I use those two tools as well.
Awesome. And so you mentioned I want to touch on the testing part because like some more specific software engineering like techniques, I guess. So obviously testing is very important in software engineering. There's a million ways you can test things, and as soon as you start talking about testing on the internet, you have everyone who's an absolute expert and only their way is correct. But with testing and leveraging AI, I thought you touched on it a little bit. Can we hear a little bit more about maybe we don't have to do like specific examples, especially if I don't want you to talk about work, obviously, but if you have a situation where you're like, you have something that needs to be tested, you have access to LLMs or Copilot, what might be an approach that you can leverage to get the benefit of AI in your testing?
Yeah, so there's a couple of ways to do that, but the most important I would say is providing as much context as you need for your task, right? Because if you have a class in I don't know C sharp that you're trying to test, you paste the whole class and your prompt is generate unit tests for this class. It will be super generic. It would probably work with good models, but it will be super generic. The in that prompt, the system has no idea what are your use cases, why are you doing that,
Mm,
how much level of granularity you need on that, right? So I found, and I'm trying as much to spread that knowledge too, but there's probably people are way more skilled than that in me, but than me. But prompt engineering is a real thing. The quality of your prompt, whether it is for testing or for other outputs of LLMs, is super important. So I spend a bit of time like fine tuning those. And for a unit test for or even for integration test, it's important that the system has the context on it. So you would literally start with something like act as a professional engineer and software tester in that stack or in that language. Be quite specific. That usually works for me. Then you would say, okay, I have this application, we're trying to do X, Y, Z. As part of this, I implemented this class that does A, B, and C. And I'm trying to test it because X, Y, Z, again, something else, right?
okay.
And then you paste your code there and you're specific about what you want to generate. Again, when I try to have a prompt that generates a lot of different stuff, like for example, if I ask to generate use cases, then the code, then to explain me, it's three tasks in one prompt, and that doesn't work the best. I
Mhm.
found that prompt decomposition is quite interesting, where you would have a lot of context on your task, but the output is super simple. For example, as a first step, you could say generate use cases that might be interesting to test with that piece of code, given the application's context of what you're trying to build. This is great because you generate ideas in that matter. You're still the main actor because you can decide like no, that doesn't make sense, or oh, this is something I didn't think about. And after that, you can replace those use cases and say, given those use cases, generate the code. And again, there is one specific task for the prompt and also use cases that you fine tune and generate it with AI or as well from any of your product like specifications. So step by step, single objective decomposed prompts, I think is a great technique. It takes more time, and I think that's the barrier because I've been seeing a bunch of friends being like, "Yeah, I paste the code and the prompt and it's done." You can do that, but it will be less specific and usually less good of a result.
Very interesting, right? So a couple of things that I'm taking away from that are um, you can basically get things to work. Like in this case, we're talking about having like, being able to write tests over a class. Let's say you can have it work with minimal effort, but
Yep,
the value of that can be dramatically different depending on how you prompt. So in this
exactly.
case, right, you do the very basics. Here's a class. Hey, ChatGPT, write tests for it, and like you said, will probably work. It will give you tests and great. So it depends. Like if your if your goal was just to get a code coverage number to go up, maybe that will do it for you.
Exactly.
But you can tell that I'm kind of being like maybe that's not really a great motivation for it. But so okay, we can get more specific, and I like that you were talking through like why, like telling the LLM why you're doing this or like what some of your goals are, not just giving it code and saying do tests. Um, I want to say this out loud because I don't want to forget to ask this question. I'm always curious when you tell the LLM to, hey, you are a professional X. Like, I want to come back to this and say, like, I want to see your opinion on how that influences
Yeah.
output. But the before I kind of jump to that, the thing that I wanted to come back to was decomposing the prompt. So I don't have a ton of experience with prompts. I would say, like, I'm very, like, I use ChatGPT and LLMs for things, but um, I would say that my experience level is certainly quite junior. I've noticed though, when you stack too much, like
Yeah.
context, like having a lot of context can be great, but when you ask it to do too many things, I
No,
find
it
that
doesn't work
the
well.
value
Mm.
of that is like very diminished. So I think
Yeah.
you made a great point. Like, split those things apart, have them be very
Yeah.
purposeful,
Hmm.
and you can still be you can be the pilot, not the co-pilot, as you're going through those and saying, okay, the output from the first step, it listed 10 things, I like 7 of them. So
Yeah.
like your input is taking that into the next part. So I love
Exactly.
that.
And it's already refined, right? Because you take those seven, you validate them, you can generate IDs based on that yourself, and it's already much more dense than just, the shallow generated, then write code, and that's it. So, yeah.
But it took more steps, right? So some people go, oh, like I can't be
Exactly.
bothered to go spend an extra 2 minutes
Exactly. And
getting
that's where
chat gpt to.
those things are valuable. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So no, that's really cool. I think that's super helpful advice. And the question, I had to say it out loud so I wouldn't forget it, is
Yeah.
when it comes to prompting, because I've heard this before, and I don't know if I've personally observed, and I'm not saying it doesn't work, but I don't think I've observed the effect of doing it. But when you say ChatGPT or whatever LLM you're using, you are a professional C sharp developer, and you have years of experience. Like, giving it that context from your experiences, how does that shape its ability to give you better output? Because like, couldn't it just couldn't it just infer that it is an
Yeah.
expert in C sharp? Like, I don't know. Like,
Yeah.
and I just curious.
Yeah, definitely. So I observed that this was a much had a much larger effect before. I would say when literally ChatGPT came out and all these models started spinning up, Claude just started as well with Anthropic from no Claude from Anthropic.
Mhm.
So it was quite powerful there. I think as time progresses, you're right. This is a bit less relevant, but I still find that there's a huge difference if I'm trying to summarize a section, for example, on a blog post or something like that that I would use
Mm.
for a newsletter. There's a way, I would say, denser output if I specify clearly what I want like the persona to be. Like if I say you're an engineer, summarize this article so that people can understand it. It will do a pretty good job with good models. This is what I was saying. As time progresses and models gets better, it's still fine. But if I say act as a professional copywriter that has 7 years of experience in Java, the output is a bit better. And as well, it will be oriented towards something, right? And it also goes with the context that I add to this persona. If I say make sure you stay technical and make sure you don't like over abstract things and simplify things too much while just still also summarizing. This kind of works well if there's a better persona defined. Again, there's a bunch of like different, I would say, templates for prompts like persona, action, and like formatting. There's way others. There's prompt engineering guide that is super cool. There's a bunch of other resources that I share as well in my newsletter. I don't have all the names exactly, but I know I shared them in the past. Um, and yeah, those things quite work. It's the same with image prompting. There's a huge difference if you learn just a bit of the formatting, just a bit of how these models are conditioned rather than just saying do a rocket with an engineer on it to do like a learning resource post or something like that. So I think that's also key for image prompting, but also for textual and prompting.
That's I don't know if I can summarize it back accurately, but I think I have a better understanding. And the way that I'm thinking about the persona part, it's not it's almost like how it's like the lens that it's going to use is like, I think the summarization one is a very good example, because
Yeah.
you could take you could take the same bit of content. So let's say that you have an article or whatever, a small post or something. That's the context. And if you say, like, in the prompt, like, this is the persona that you have, how it wants to communicate a summary is probably through the lens of that person. So if you said you are a professional engineer that has 50 years of experience in these fields, like it
Yeah.
will I'm assuming will probably try to be extremely technical in its
Yes.
summary. But if you
Yep.
were to say, um, just to give you another example, you are the same article, but you're like an expert, like social media
Yeah.
content creator, and you're not talking so much about being extremely technical, then it
Yeah,
might find a
definitely.
way to summarize in a way that's a lot more consumable for a
Abstract,
general audience.
exactly. Yes, totally. That
Interesting.
definitely. Yeah. And again, you don't have to exactly specify that in your persona. As you said, you can like add that layer saying stay technical, use simple
Mm,
words or stuff like that. But defining a persona up top worked in the past, and I think is still quite embedded into the latest like generations of the LLMs. So for me, it works quite well and quite better when I add one that is quite precise. Again, it's one sentence. It's quite easy. You just have to think a bit through it.
interesting. No, I think that's super cool. I want to ask maybe one more question, and I don't know if you have an answer to this off the top of your head that we can dive into. But so you mentioned testing is one of the things that software engineers can use AI with for a bit more of an advantage there. Is there another thing outside of testing that you would say is like another really big value add as a software engineer? You're like, I'm a software engineer. I want to lean a little bit more into AI, so Devin AI doesn't come and take my job. Like what what is it that maybe like something other than testing that people can leverage AI for in software development?
Yeah, there's just so many ways to do it and to do it right as well. As I said, we mentioned testing, core, I would say development, like adding code to a code base and kind of like leveraging AI to do something can be very beneficial. Again, if you are always the pilot and still keep learning about what you're adding, it's the same like I would say principle. Like when you had something in the past with Stack Overflow, you just don't copy paste it and call it today.
Right.
You need to understand it. It's the same thing
So
right
some
now.
of us did, but
Yeah, yes, but it's the same thing, right? And I think outside of like core development testing, um, communication, summarization, and understanding in your projects is super important. If you're working through, I don't know, an issue on GitHub that has 50 comments, the status is not clear.
mm,
Extract the thread, summarize it, done. In 2 minutes, you know where the
very
things is,
interesting.
right? So
That's a it's a good use
there's a
case.
lot
It's a
of
very
things.
clear use case.
And it has value, and there is not really a drawback, right? The system can miss things, but again, the simple prompt that you can store once, use everywhere, would work. Again, if things are different, like if it's a GitHub issue, it's not the same as if it's an article or something else. But you create one prompt, you take 5, 10 minutes for 10 different things, a GitHub issue, a feature to implement, an article, literally, I don't know, a list of links. Like you can create prompts for these things and just then reuse them. So there is this, then anything that comes into learning, as we mentioned a bit, like I love that for learning. I was saying about Rust, for example. I'm learning on that.
Hmm,
I can like open up the book of Rust, which is a great resource, watch a YouTube video, and then be like, okay, about Rust I know X, Y, and Z. I still don't know. Please explain to me why is borrowing of memory in Rust, why do we need it, why does it work? And it will explain it to you, right? You can double check it, but it's something that if you were to understand it, you would need to search through the docs. You will need to go through YouTube and find the right video. It's doable as well, and sometimes it's more reliable, but it takes more time. You can cross. I would say you can jump that part. Try to have it with AI and then fact check it. This is usually faster. I
mm.
found it faster at least. So I think for learning, it's really great. I want to build a multi-threaded application in Go. No idea how to do that. You can have a prompt for that, specified for like how to build or kickstart a project, and ask for a couple of links. When the LLM is browser enabled, you can ask for a couple of links to start with. Those things might be outdated. It's fine. It doesn't have to be a perfect answer, but at least you have a starting point and some code snippet you can start, or how to kickstart a project or stuff like that. So I found that for learning it's also really great. So I would summarize it to this, like for learning perspective, learning something new or going deeper into something that you love. AI is great for core development or test development. Use right again, as we were saying, it can be really cool. Um, for documenting, summarizing, and also getting to know the context of something that is big. It's also quite great to create content. It's also quite great. Again, huge disclaimer: never be the co-pilot. You still have to own the idea, the
Yeah.
narrative behind what you're posting, but it can help you format stuff. It can help you find ideas to post about. But yeah, writing literally a post with ChatGPT, and probably every content creator tried, it's not working. You have to either delegate the ID creation, you have to either have parts of it being research or help you research for the post, but it cannot be the output is literally the post. How you prompt it, it's just not working well.
Right. Yeah, you'll see it's actually very obvious. Maybe some people don't know because they don't
Yeah.
pay much attention to it, but it's almost I don't know how you don't notice this stuff anymore, but you'll see
Yes.
like in the vast realm of
Yes,
whatever, we're going
exactly.
to dive into and do this judiciously and it's like these are all words that people just don't say.
Never.
So
Yeah, exactly.
now that's super
And
cool. So, oh, go ahead.
yeah. Yeah, I was saying like jumping on that point, sometimes you see posts like this and you don't want to comment like, did you do this? Because you know you didn't, but it's true that it's something to pay attention about. And I think it's the whole core like click moment with AI. Uh, it's not there to replace us. It's there to make us way better. And I really think and believe it will happen. There's a lot of like, like controversy about will programmers still exist. I still think we will exist. Will be maybe a different job name. I don't know, but I do think there is value into pursuing that and getting better with the use of these tools, getting used to them because it can really kickstart stuff
Yeah.
for I would say simpler tasks or even tasks that we talked about.
I love that. Yeah, I've kind of taken the same philosophy where it's like I don't think that software engineers just disappear like we're obsolete, but I think that the things that we do and spend our time on, like they will shift. And I think the only way you become obsolete is when you're ignoring the tools and the trends that are coming along. Like AI
Yeah,
is not going away. So if you're like, I just don't like it, I don't want to use it, I would say
yeah,
like you're probably putting yourself at risk because everyone else will start using it. They will leverage the advantages. And it's not that AI just takes over software engineers, it's that the software engineers that are leveraging it will become better software engineers and have that advantage. So
yeah,
that's very cool.
definitely.
Well, thank you for sharing a whole bunch of different ideas for how people can leverage, especially software engineers can leverage different AI things, like different concepts, whether it's testing, building out new stuff, learning, I think is such like an underrated thing. Like, just summarize this in a way that I can understand it. Now all of a sudden you have valuable content that you can interpret. Like tons of awesome stuff there. I'll ask offline for links from you, but if you want to tell the audience, like, where can people find you? They want to engage with you. Like, let's hear all the places.
Yeah. I mean, definitely for me, I think the most important points are on LinkedIn. So you Google my name, I mean, you LinkedIn my name, and you should be able to find me. And then I have my newsletters, as I was saying, it's available on Substack, so you can search for Hungry Minds on Substack, or go as well to hungryminds.dev. It's sourcing the same like post that I publish. And I also post on Twitter, but I'm a bit less active. You can also try to see me there. And yeah, I think that's mostly it.
Cool. Yeah, I'll definitely make sure I double check and get links from you after, and I'll have them in the video description and comments and stuff. So,
Perfect.
Alex, thank you. This was super cool. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your insights. And yeah, I'd love to catch up with you at some point in the future and see how the different things in AI are evolving for you and your experiences using them. So, thanks once again.
Definitely has been a pleasure. Thanks a lot, Nick.